Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Mark Prater podcast, where our aim is to connect our global family of Sovereign Grace churches with our executive director. Mark, you've been trotting around the globe again, as you have been known to do. And as we record this, you arrived home in the wee hours of this morning. Tell us where you were at.
Well, I'm operating on very little sleep, Ben. So we'll see how well this episode goes. I was in Guadalajara, Mexico, at the invitation of Carlos Contreras. So I arrived on Monday. Got in Guadalajara about noon their time. And what I did on Monday is I actually met with the Mexico leadership team. And
Mm.
it was we had a wonderful meeting together talking about a number of issues. Let me just remind folks who's on that team, because I want you to pray for these men. Carlos Contreras leads that team. He's like our executive. He's like the executive director, the title I
Mm.
have in Mexico. So he leads that team. Carlos is the senior pastor of Iglesia Gracia Soberana in Juarez, and he has two other pastors on his team there in Juarez that are also on the leadership team, Abelardo Munoz and then Cuatamo. Those are three guys from Juarez on the team. And then two
Mm.
guys from El Paso, our Spanish-speaking church in El Paso, Mission de Gracia. And that's Helman Avila, who is the senior pastor, and Jaime Chow. And then Manolo Quintal, who is the senior pastor of our Sovereign Grace Church in Silao, Mexico. Those are the
Mhm.
men that serve on the leadership team. They are working very hard because there's a lot going on in
Mm.
Mexico. And they're facing issues in similar categories that the Sovereign Grace leadership team faces. We spent time talking about their pastor's college, which is going really well. But how
Mm.
do they fund that, for example? Which they're becoming a self-sufficient nation, by the way, which is really encouraging. Not quite there
Yeah.
yet, but they're getting there. They were talking about church planting and the church plants they have planned, which is very exciting. They were talking about the number of churches that are eager for adoption, where they're at, and sort of where they're at in the process. Just a number of things like that. They were talking about just how they can work more together efficiently as a team. That conversations that we've had on the leadership team that I
Mm.
lead for Sovereign Grace. So it was just wonderful being with those men. They know each other. They've known each other a
Mm.
long time, and so they laugh readily. There was a lot of
Mm.
laughter in that meeting. It was a dinner meeting. There was a lot of good conversation, and they're doing an amazing job leading Sovereign Grace in the nation of Mexico because God's
Mm.
just blessing their labors. It's amazing to see all that God is doing. So that's what I did on Monday, anyway.
Wonderful. I just reminded of a few years ago when Sovereign Grace Mexico was officially established, and then I love hearing these updates about how uh, they're really stepping into this. This is becoming a significant
Yeah.
reality down in Mexico, and that includes what you got to be part of on Tuesday and Wednesday as they had their National Assembly. Talk to us about the National Assembly. What happened there?
Yeah, Carlos invited me down to attend the Mexico National Assembly meeting. And by the way, I'm so glad you mentioned when they became a nation. I've actually forgotten. It was 3 years ago
Yeah.
that the Council of Elders, our global Council of Elders, voted unanimously to
Mm.
establish them as a nation. So that's been 3 years,
Yeah. What a joy that
and
was.
it's so great to see what's happening at the Mexico National Assembly meeting. They met Tuesday through Thursday. I was just there for Tuesday and Wednesday. There were 73 pastors at
Man,
the Mexico National Assembly meeting there in
wonderful.
Guadalajara that was held at our church, Gracia Soberana, there in Guadalajara. But 73 men from all over
Mm.
Mexico, and it was just so encouraging to see. Those men represented partner churches, and they represent a number of candidate churches, what we would call in the
Mm.
states,
Good.
churches that are pursuing formal adoption into Sovereign Grace. They got a number of guys that are in the ordination process. So that was just really, really encouraging. So their meeting had very much the same feel that we would have in our Global Council of Elders meeting.
Mm.
Carlos gave what we would call a State of the Union. He really just gave an update on what's happening in Mexico. That was so encouraging to hear
Mm.
regarding what's happening in certain churches, churches that are interested in being adopted, where they have church plants planned. It was just all really, really encouraging. They also did their business portion of the meeting and had motions that they voted on. So they ratified BCO amendments for their Mexico BCO. They voted on pastors who would serve on their national committees. They were just given an update on a number of things that would all fall in the sort of the business realm category. Then the other thing that Carlos did is he had a few churches give different updates. And some of those were partner churches, others were churches that are pursuing adoption. So I'll just tell you one quick update from a pastor in Morleone. He just has his oral exam left. So this will soon be a partner church, likely in another one in Mexico. And they have just been, reaching out with the gospel. They've baptized a number of new believers, but recently he said he told this story. In that area is the biggest cult in Mexico, and I think
Mm.
Carlos told me the biggest cult in Latin America.
Mm.
And somehow a few of these folks are coming to the Church of Morleone, and so they're preaching the gospel. And these people are changing, some of them being born again and baptized. And it's just this
Excellent.
crazy story of how someone leaves a well-known cult, and comes to one of our churches there in Morleone.
Mm.
So it was just an encouraging update to hear. And
Yeah.
there's so much more I could say about that. The other thing is there were messages that Carlos had planned. So he asked me to speak on my vision for the future of Sovereign Grace, which obviously, as I'm transitioning out of the executive director role, these are my hopes for the future that I know John shares with me, John Payne. But I wanted to honor that for him. The other thing so I did that on Tuesday. On Wednesday, he asked me to speak on hard conversations.
Mm.
He knows it's something that's been on my heart for us to grow in. So he said,
Right.
"Could you do a complete message on that?" So I did, from Galatians 2:11 through 14, where
Wow.
Paul confronts Peter, and there's a
Yeah.
lot there that we can learn from regarding hard conversations. And then the theme of their messages that tied them together, didn't apply to mine, was the fear of God. So
Mm.
Cuauhtémoc gave a message on the fear of God in the pastor. It was really good.
Mm.
Carlos gave one yesterday after I left on the fear of God and the pastor's love for Christ and his church.
Mm.
Are some of the messages that happened. So I was so excited to be
Yeah, I
there,
bet.
to see the nation running in the way that we all hope for in Sovereign Grace,
Hmm.
and really, really doing well. To see all the churches that are either being strengthened or interested in becoming a part of Sovereign Grace, and then the church plants they have planned. And they have at least 3 churches planned, church plants planned over the next year or so. 2 of them I know are in very poor areas.
Mm.
One in Guadalupe, and one really on the west side of Juarez. And so I got to have lunch with those men and talk a little bit about. They're both in the Pastors College right now, the Mexico Pastors College, and just talking through some of the challenges and issues they face. And I don't face what they face every day.
Yeah.
There are pressures from all around. There's obviously the poverty aspect. There can be the drugs and the cartel involvement. I know the guy in West Juarez has a number of folks that in the people that he's gathering that are illiterate, and just how does he
Mm.
teach them the Bible? So, um, godly men that we are honored to do partnership with, and I
Yeah.
thank God for my brothers in Mexico.
Mm. Well, it certainly is encouraging to hear about how the guys in Mexico, man, they're just running with this thing in Sovereign
Yeah, right.
Grace and
Yeah.
are owning and expanding Sovereign Grace churches. Even more encouraging to hear about how the gospel is advancing in
Mhm.
Mexico through their
Amen.
efforts. So, thanks for the update, Mark, and thank you all for checking out the podcast. We'll see you here next week, Lord willing. Bye for now.
Thank you for watching. If you have questions or comments, Mark would love to hear from you. For more videos like this, hit subscribe on YouTube or by email at markkprater.com.